Hi all, Rick here. The Romulan Star Empire and the United Federation of Planets have one thing in common. They both began encountering the Borg at roughly the same time. Well, okay, technically the Federation had that one classified event from Enterprise, but when the Borg Collective began making its advance into the Alpha and Beta quadrants, they did so along the border between the UFP and Romulan space in 2364. This led the two powers to assume that each other were responsible for numerous colony disappearances. However, eventually the Federation learned of the Borg thanks to Q. It seems, however, that the Romulans may have started encountering the Borg just before the Federation confirmed their existence, and simply did not share the intel. Now, just how the Romulans dealt and interacted with the Borg is actually a lot more fleshed out than the other videos I've done on the topic, like the Dominion or Klingons, and in this case we actually have examples in the show. For a start, the Romulans are the only other power that we see that is as fascinated with the Borg tech as the Federation is. Like Starfleet, they will seize any opportunity to get their hands on salvage or even undertake missions to observe or obtain tech themselves, often at great risk. However, as with the Federation, they are aware of the great threat the Borg pose, having lost entire colonies to their initial forces. We can see from the Transwarp network map in the shows that the Beta Quadrant, home of the Star Empire, is riddled with far more Transwarp tunnels than Federation spaces, suggesting that perhaps there would have been a higher likelihood of meeting a drone incursion. However, it's not until the 24th century that we start hearing whispers of the Romulans dealing with the Collective, and it's highly unlikely that they have been dealing with an advancing Borg threat for much longer than Starfleet while keeping it all quiet. That being said, after 2364 we do start to see apocryphal tales of such incursions, and the Star Empire seems unwilling to share in its results. The Romulans were aware of the Battle of Wolf 359, indeed it was hard to miss. However, a portion of their intelligence on the event came from the uncovered wreckage of a crashed sphere found on Netlanus 6. This sphere had crashed shortly after the battle, hinting that perhaps while the galaxy was focused on the infamous conflict, a separate incursion was occurring deep behind the Romulan curtain. Intelligence retrieved from the sphere included the shared logs of events from Wolf 359, disseminated through the hive mind. It gave detailed reports on how Picard had managed to clue the Enterprise in on a way to override the Borg's regeneration, but also revealed that the Collective had already now adapted to remove that particular vulnerability. This was much to the Romulans' chagrin, as they had been researching projects along a similar defensive avenue that were now closed to them. The Romulans' own intelligence agencies had already obtained proof of the Borg's existence and begun theorizing countermeasures, seemingly before the Federation informed them, or at least around about the same time. So exactly how the Romulans dealt with the Borg is unclear, only that they certainly did, and even met with some success. Next to Starfleet, the Romulans are likely the most experienced when it comes to anti-Borg operations. From supplementary material, we see that they were willing to explore the more intricate side of disabling or sabotaging the hive mind, which is on par with their classic tactics of avoiding a direct confrontation in favour of the, quotes, smarter or sneakier approach. We've also seen their willingness to implement Thaleron weaponry, a substance banned by most others as too dangerous, but it would be quite effective at destroying all biomatter on a Borg vessel. It's likely that the Romulans used unorthodox tactics to take out incursions in advance, before mobilising a fleet of warbirds to intercept if needed. It is unlikely that the Romulans were dealing with the Borg during the Dominion War, otherwise they would have not been able to commit to the Dominion front, and even if they were fighting the Borg, it would have been in a similar situation to the Federation's battles of Sector 001, with one or maybe two raids that were dealt with. The intro for Lower Decks was mentioned in passing to be full of canonical events, although the humorous and hyperbolic nature of that show renders the exact details a little murky, in my opinion. However, it does depict a skirmish that began as a Borg incursion being intercepted by a Romulan fleet. The gag over the series is that it sees ever-increasing forces getting involved and culminating in Voyager appearing to observe too, so yeah, I'm not sure about its complete veracity. But the Borg encountering the Romulans is, at the very least, assumed to have continued to occur throughout the 2380s. One major plot element may have been foreshadowed, coincidentally or not, in Voyager's episode Timeless. Harry Kim from an alternate future in 2390 recounts the finding of a Borg cube adrift in the Beta Quadrant, something we inevitably see. Janeway's virus disrupted the Borg across their entire network, with many vessels entering a dormant state as the Queen's control was severed. One such vessel was later termed the Artifact, and was found drifting by the crew of the USS Protostar in 2383. This was a newer cube, known as the Invasion Cube at 4.7 kilometers wide. Through their meddling, they inadvertently reactivated it before fleeing. The Invasion Cube itself then resumed its course towards the Romulan Star Empire and assimilated 2 Romulan scout ships, which included a member of the Zhat Vash and their neurologically messed up minds. The admonition was a message meant solely to be interpreted by artificial minds, and it broke many who had it imparted into their brain, including the Borg's hive mind. That proceeded to collapse their already fragile cube network once again, rendering it inert. The Romulans soon descended on the derelict and began carefully tearing it apart for technology which they could reverse engineer, and numerous advancements were made through the procurement of this knowledge. Building off the goodwill that was created after the Dominion War and the Praetor Shinzon incident, the Star Empire actually reached out to other organisations, including the Federation, to continue to plunder and study the cube. This founded the Borg Artifact Research Institute, and among the teams sent a new director, Hugh was assigned to oversee the project, placing the recovery of former drones or ex-Borg as a priority. However, the Romulan supernova then caused a disruption to their plans, leading to a dissolution of the Star Empire. In its wake, the Free State emerged as the dominant faction of a new Romulan government, and eventually returned to the reclamation site of the artifact and maintained its research institute. Although it seems they did so out of a sense of unwillingness to deal with the ramifications of dismantling that treaty. In licensed lore, beyond the 2009 Star Trek film featuring the time-displaced Captain Nero, we learn that his vessel, originally a humble mining ship named the Narada, was re-engineered with Borg technology in the aftermath of the supernova of 2387. It establishes that the Star Empire maintained an off-site station near the Hakona star system, known as the Vault. This large complex was a research and development hub based on translating Borg findings and tech into something workable for the Star Empire, and operated by the Tal Shiar. From the Countdown comic, which is not entirely compatible with current canon, we find the remains of a Borg sphere in a dismantled state within its cavernous interior, suggesting that, besides the publicly known artifact, the Star Empire had had success elsewhere in disabling and capturing a Borg vessel. Although a sphere is a markedly easier thing to bring down than an invasion cube. With the Praetor and many of his council dead at the hands of Nero, the Tal Shiar lacked the oversight of the Empire and took matters into their own hands. In a bid to weaken the Federation and Klingon empires, the paranoia of invasion fueling the decision, the Narada was extensively overhauled with Borg developments, and then Captain Nero was set loose on his vendetta. They now had an operational asset in play that was technically not a part of the Star Empire, nor even the Tal Shiar, out to distract their rival powers from taking advantage of the Star Empire's weakness. At least, that's how they saw it. The Tal Shiar's fascination with Borg tech extends well beyond the reforging of the Narada. In Star Trek Online, which continues the events of the comic, we not only visit the Vault, but see what continued experimentation with Borg technology has resulted in. By the early 25th century, the Tal Shiar has continued to benefit from the research obtained from the Romulans' numerous Borg studies, and embarked on a plan to enhance their operatives with implants, as well as forcibly experiment and convert Romulan civilians into their service using various hive mind adjacent developments. This is all in an effort to gain the Tal Shiar more influence over the now emerging Romulan powers, like the growing unificationist movement and Riemann segments. Extensive modifications were then planted across numerous ships, enhancing them with advanced weaponry, sensors, shielding and more, all derived from Borg tech and installed with far less moderation. This had a downside, as it also acted to attract the Borg who come to recover their disseminated and salvaged components. On top of this, they also co-opted researchers who had extensive knowledge in Borg technology and forced them to work at Tal Shiar-run institutes. In summary, we know that the Romulans were dealing with the Borg at least as often as Starfleet, and with the same goals of not only seeing it defeated, but learning from them. Reverse engineering their tech was a priority for the Star Empire, and upheld from its successor powers. They clearly met with some success too, but the exact level of that success and the methods in how they achieved them is still clandestine. Additional tales and speculation paints a picture of them actually dealing with more instances of confrontation with the Collective and seizing the spoils quickly without their neighbours' awareness. Subsequent media often depicts the Romulans, chiefly the Tal Shiar, as having even more success in implementing Borg advancements into their own ships and even people. Had the supernova not crippled their government and shaken up their empire, then they were well on their way to eclipsing the Federation's understanding and own implementation of Borg tech. Ironically, a lot of their benefits seem to have come from the acts of Starfleet, such as Wolf 359 and Janeway's virus. Like most things the Romulan Empire did, it was all done under the veil of secrecy, and while sharing the results would have benefited in the long run, as the Borg are a threat to all, the paranoia of the Star Empire kept it all behind closed doors. So, how did the Romulans deal with the Borg? Quietly, from opportunistic victories and salvage, which led to greater understandings of how to implement Borg advancements and develop more countermeasures against them. The likely use of methods that the UFP would balk at and illegal weapons accelerated their success, but it's clear they took heavy losses in both confrontations and probably in researching their spoils. Outposts were forced to rapidly learn from provided components and probably then disappeared. But it got results, and in time, the Romulans, whether Empire or Free State, saw great success in countering Borg advances. It's just that the Starfleet, Janeway in particular, got there first. But now their research is still of high importance to the Romulans, and with the Borg Collective now pretty much down in its entirety, I wonder what sort of arms race could rise in the aftermath. Thanks for watching this breakdown on the Borg vs Romulans. Until the next one, I've been Rick, thanks again, and goodbye.